Hey guys, this is Carnifex with another Nerd This video. Today I'm going to go over who I consider to be the top 5 characters who are PvP viable. That's the main thing. There's two main things, right? And they are also super useful in the raid. So a couple caveats to this. I am not including any characters that you currently cannot get to 7 stars. So no Shadar, no little baddie characters like that. We don't have the ability to get them to 7-star. Wonder Lula, right? We can't get her to 7-star. Since who knows how frequently we're going to get Wonder Lula tournaments. And even then it would take 4 tournaments for someone, I guess 3 if someone bought the pack in order to unlock her to 7 stars. Really, until you're on hard mode, you're always building. So what can we build towards? No, we can use in 7-star in tier 7 raids. So that'd be PvP viable in at least some way. And then also we have to really get 7-star, and again, they have to be good at the raids, because that's kind of like the third thing, but that's what the top of the video is. So main thing is, are they good in the raid, but with these 2 additional categories. So we're not going to see Soleus here. He's the one main exception who I know some people will have him at 7 stars. There's just so few people who do. If you have Soleus at 7 stars, you certainly have everything else around him in order to know what you need. But Soleus is fantastic, particularly on the Hard Orc and the Erochar bosses, but you probably already knew that if you had him. So this is my top 5. So now second caveat to this is that there's actually 7 characters in my top 5. I could not break a tie for 5th because they're 2 just very different characters, and one of them has such incredible PvP viability that I didn't want to make it sound like she wasn't good for the raid. So, and then there's a tie because there's a tandem who one of them is the main character, but the other one's really required to run in a tandem with him in order for it to work. So enough talk. Who are the characters? So we got first, Kyra is one of my ties for 5th. So Kyra is fantastic for damage. She has some great mechanics in her to where not only can she turn invisible and force taunt with tanks, but those counterattacks can be helpful. The main raids where you're going to use her, the main bosses you're going to use her are Soleus and Erochar. Soleus, you're going to use her because not only can she if you think it's more useful to put ability block on one of the tanks to prolong that, that's really useful. She does AoE damage, so you can hurt Soleus. She can hurt Soleus even if the tanks have taunt up. Again, invisible to force the tank to taunt. I can't tell you the number of times that I've had characters get mauled whenever I'm with Kinley or something, where that turn where they don't have taunt seems to take forever and someone just gets wrecked. So it's going to help bridge the gap there. And then finally, the invisibility can boost her damage, so she's all about the damage. The reason why she's good for Erochar as well, first of all, her AoE actually does more damage. If you look, I have both max. She does 230 there, 240, so it's not much, but she actually does do more damage with her AoE, so you can still use it on cooldown whenever Erochar has his scales down. But also, when you pair her with Venomate, Venomate is able to call her to assist some, so that can either help knock out scales if Venomate goes early, or you can get in some extra hits with her if the scales are already knocked down. So she's one of the 2 tied in the top 5. Next, we're going to go to the other member tied at 5, and that is Rantha. So, with Rantha, her utility is very different. Initially, you might use her on your Soleus team if you're still working on building a more complete team, but Rantha is fantastic for Erochar. Now, you don't want to rely on assists too much whenever you're thinking about a tier 7 Erochar team. Unless you have a couple mechanics at play, you're better off just going for multi-hit attacks, because he applies daze every 4 turns, every 4 of his turns, and it, that's going to kill any of your assists, any of your counterattacks, right? It's still better than a bunch of single target people for sure, but it does cut into your efficiency of lowering the skills a bit. So Rantha, right, whenever Daze isn't on, she essentially gives you 2 bonus attacks on her turn, right? You get 1 from her basic when Bear is summoned, because Bear comes to assist, and then also when the bear follows up with a hit. So 3 hits from one character on basics alone. That's really great. Also, her second ability has between 5 to 8 shots, depending on how much you've boosted it. That's enough to knock out all the scales, get some damage in. And then also the leadership is great because it is sometimes hard to justify putting a healer on an Erochar team because the damage isn't that crazy and he hits a hard enrage anyway, and so you don't last beyond that anyway. So that little bit of lifesteal can help you run a team with no healers and crank out more damage, or have another multi-hit attacker in who's almost more like a support. So they're my 2 tied at number 5. So number 5 tied. Number 4 is, and again, this is someone I know a lot of people won't have built up yet, but he is someone that a fair amount of people have at 7 stars at this point out of the Whaley peeps, and that is Hard Orc. Hard Orc has a fantastic kit against Soleus. Not only does he apply bleed, which we'll get more into this, but since Soleus takes, he takes reduced damage from magic, so you want to use all of your, you want to use exclusively physical damage DPS against him. Bleeding, not only does it do damage to him, even though it isn't as significant, it's normally it's like 5%, right? But if you did that against a raid boss, it would just crumble, right? So they lower the amount of damage that the bleed tick actually does, but you still do 10% additional damage with physical damage, while any stack, if there's even 1 stack of bleed, it doesn't stack to where you get like 70 if you had 7 stacks of bleed on him, but you get that. And then as you can see, 100% chance for 2 turns, so that's fantastic to use against Soleus. He really does have utility wherever though. His AoE can help clear the ads, but again, the main ads that are really a pain in the butt are the Soleus ads, because they keep up their taunt. You know, it's one, you can throw up a bunch of DPS against Mega Wheel, right? And yeah, he'll tick up his turn meter, but the ads aren't gonna take away from your damage, they're just gonna kill you, right? You can get completely debilitated, particularly if you're not quite at the appropriate gear level yet, even if you have good strategy by the tanks in this. So against Soleus, so again, it's good for any of them because all of the ads have specials, but particularly good against Soleus. The cheat death mechanic, again, a little bit of healing, right? If you run her with Mortha, who's not a particularly good healer, and who is going to heal the people who have the most damage, regeneration can help keep those other people up. But damage increase, also great, fantastic, right? Particularly as you're trying to increase your damage against a raid boss. But cheat death is fantastic. Cheat death can essentially allow you to, kind of like for those of you who play, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, right? The Night Sisters, whenever you run them in Heart Sith Triumvirate, you can essentially throw this up right before Soleus's big AoE, where he would have crushed you all because he has so many stacks. It's crazy. Throws up cheat death, and nobody actually dies. And if you have a good healer up, boom, pops everybody back up. Everybody's fine. So really good there. All of the mini bosses have AoE, so again, that's not something that's strictly good against Soleus, but the other 2 parts of his kit are at least somewhat to heavily advantage towards Soleus. And this final one here, this is really the thing that makes him a fantastic utility in these raids, is because we don't really have that much cleansing right now. We have Patriarch Chi, who does some single target. We have a few people that do some self debuff removal, but there's really not much cleansing in this game. But Hard Orc is able to remove 1 debuff from 4 allies at the start of the turn. So if you do some speed tuning to where your Hard Orc is going to follow up as soon as he can after the raid boss, or at least with a decent frequency of the turns, this is going to be fantastic. Hard Orc is fantastic. I know a ton of people aren't going to have him at 7 star, but frankly, a lot more people are going to have him at 7 star than Soleus, and I didn't want to completely neglect the truly top tier characters for this raid that also have great PvP viability. Alright, so number 3, and this is our combo. I didn't put any of our cheaters into the top 2 where it was technically a pair. And that pair is Revel and Snorri. So we're going to go to Snorri first. Stop. Oh well, I misclicked. It happens. So we all know what this is. This is the Bleed Wombo combo. You only even have to get Snorri to 5. You can certainly put it into 6. I've been holding out tons, as you can see, tons of ability scrolls, waiting for the new reveal for who's going to be needed for the next character, the next legendary. But the Wombo combo, you throw this on. I mean, I've seen Revels end up in T6 with hundreds of thousands of damage. So, I mean, and again, some of that doesn't actually count because that's damage done to the ads, but they're both fantastic because they have an AoE to help you clear the ads, and as we all know, Snorri's bleeds help build up Revel's passive. Snorri does have some buff removal here, so if you kind of leave his buff on until he gets blind, then you can pop this off, or particularly baddies. So this allows you to kind of use a turn for something if you're blinded by Soleus, and it allows you to remove it if you're blinded by baddies, because baddies last for 2 turns. Soleus will only last for 1. The basic is fine. You know, you're building him for damage, and particularly if he's buffed, he's have a bunch of crit chance added on top, so it's high chance to crit. And then also the magic armor and tenacity while not in berserk stance. So again, you throw that on, and he's going to be able to. So ideally, you would actually have this. You would have his berserker stance off, right, and but with the cooldown up right whenever Soleus uses his AoE, because that's going to give you a big crank to your turn meter right after you would have been blinded. But he's also going to have a decent chance to resist that blind in the first place. And not that it's really going to matter because he would have cleansed it anyway, but then also the magic armor increase is going to help increase his survivability, because we all know he's kind of a squishy dude. So that's part 1 of the tandem, and then let's go ahead and grab Revel. So Revel, as we all know, this passive right here, you get it up to here 20% for each stack of bleeding. Remember, you have Hard Orc that applies bleeding for 2 turns. You have Snorri, which applies bleeding on his basic. You have Revel, who applies bleeding on his basic. You can easily have 5 stacks going on at the same time with Revel, and that means he's literally doing double damage. Absolutely bonkers. And then not only does that happen, but then he also recovers almost a full turn of turn meter if you attack a target who's bleeding with his second special. So, I mean, Revel's a boss. Fantastic against Soleus. Revel, Snorri, and Hard Orc are really the core of the current best Soleus team. So now we get to the top 2. These are 2 solos. If you want to take a guess, now's your time, because the answer is Nighteel. Now, this is kind of a caveat to it, because one of the ways in which she's broken right now is one of the things that's really crucial to her being valuable. So this passive right here, again, we don't have many people as well who are able to remove buffs from enemies. Here's one. So she removes 1 debuff from herself and Soleus, right, which is great. Again, we don't have much of a cleanse anyway. But then she also removes 1 buff from a random enemy at the start of a turn. So this is one where the viability increases if you are able to clear the ads in time. You're not going to use her against Soleus, so we're not worrying about that. And Soleus puts so many buffs on himself. The odds that it's just also marginal, the value of removing a buff from him. There is some value to removing its Mega Wheel, because he only gives himself 1. Now Kyra can still give him the counter, so that's another option. But again, she's going to do it every turn, but it also can remove his speed that he gives himself. So that's great. But you're more often going to end up using her right now, at least. Unless you have Soleus, you're almost certainly going to be using her against Hard Orc, because she does hit so hard, and that's one of the things that puts her at number 2 for me. And Hard Orc, all of his self buffs are all the damage stuff. So that AoE can really smack you in the face, and removing the crit chance or crit damage or damage, something like that, all those things can really help with your survivability against him. It's not entirely working right now, but we'll get there. The attack buff. All your allies are going to get an attack buff. They're going to have it essentially half of their turns with how her cooldown works, assuming that she's not particularly slower than any of than the rest of your team. So that's fantastic. And we all know this thing hits like a freaking truck. It's like a freaking truck, particularly whenever she's buffed herself. So that's great. And the basic is certainly not bad. There's not much utility to the chance to deal damage through shield. I guess the exception would be if you were to use her again with Solis against Little Batty after she had used her cheat death, but so marginal, and so much of her damage is going to be cut out in other ways because Solis just resists so much magic damage. So definitely use her either against Mega Wheel or Hard Orc. If you have a good Hard Orc team, that's where she fits better. And now for the final character, our top of the top, it is Freezard. Now, there's a couple reasons for this, and it's all utility related. He does put out some crazy damage. If you have not gone up against a team that you said, oh, look, their power's not that strong, oh, their Freezard only has this much power, he has outrageous amounts of magic damage for his power levels because he's pretty squishy, but he has outrageous amounts of magic damage for his power level. So definitely don't underestimate that by any means. Currently, we have access to 2 characters that can create slow. There are other characters that will be able to, like Mordoom will be able to, General Murdoch will be able to, Shadar with his leadership will allow slow to be applied. Right now we have 2 characters. One, and this is going to be my video for tomorrow, he's going to be my video for tomorrow, so I'm going to hold off on that, but if you've been going into this at all, you already know who it is. And Freezard. Slow is so huge. It's helpful against Hard Orc. It's helpful against any boss. It's particularly helpful against Hard Orc because he gives no speed buff to himself. And Erochar. Now, in my opinion, there is no more valuable debuff against a boss than slow on Erochar and buff immunity on Solis. There's nothing bigger than either. Those are the 2 most significant things. Right now, we have no way to put buff immunity on Solis. There are characters who have that. We don't have them yet. But Erochar, the main reason is because when you slow any character, right, you essentially reduce their their damage per turn, not their turn, but turns taken by you. Because they're moving at half speed, right? Erochar is the additional situation where because the scales stay down, you end up with twice as many turns with the scales down. And 75% chance is not fantastic, but even with 50%, with a couple restarts, I'm able to get it so that we're currently doing T6 and we aren't able to clear it in one day, so we take 2 shots. So the first shot, I'll use him against Hard Orc, and even with a pretty undergeared team, I was able to do about 160k with a Freezard team because he just literally had slow on Hard Orc the whole time. So slow is absolutely huge. Second, and really the second most important debuff in any kind of raid usually, again, unless it's a situation like Solis where they throw a bunch of buffs on yourself, so you need buff immunity. Armor decrease. Literally decreases their mitigation by 50%. So not as great as you boosting your attack, but at least more often than not, but it is still really significant. Also allows him the ability to do some damage to the ads if you are using him against Hard Orc in particular. He also has some viability against Mega Wheel because slow is good. Slow is good against anyone. And also he has turn meter reduction, which we'll get to in just a sec. The one character you should not be using him against is Solis, because not only does he do magic damage, but just everything else is just mitigated by the current situation with all the buffs that Solis has on himself about half the time. And as we get here, right, 75% decrease turn meter by 25%. Now this doesn't matter against Erochar. Erochar resists all turn meter reduction. He still is able to suffer the effects of slow because that's having his speed. It's not doing anything to his turn meter state, just its generation. So 75% chance to reduce the turn meter by 25%. Fantastic, right? Against a hard orc in particular, this can help you keep down the frequency of the attacks and by Corcrum and Mar, and it's also going to help you clear them without having to take away too much attention away from hard orc with your single target. This is not unuseful, right? Particularly if you're about to get wiped, whether it's to get, just a couple more shots in there. If he did get just a little, if he is kind of your lowest HP protection combo character and an AoE only would have taken him out, no one else. You can heal him back up, keep himself alive. It's not crazy useful. It's not normally going to result in that much extra damage or survivability for your team, but the rest of his kit is so fantastic for it. So anyway, those are my top 5, kind of 7 characters who are incredibly useful in the raid, that are still useful in PvP, and again, we're not considering any characters we currently can't get to 7 stars or Solius, so legendaries. Anyways, looking forward to the next legendary reveal. It's supposed to be in the next few days here, and then I'm hoping tomorrow, if not then in a couple days, I will put out another video. These will be the 5 characters who you will almost never see in a PvP circumstance who are massively helpful in the raid. So hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you next time.